So, 18 minutes isn't particularly long to try and save the world, but it's exactly what we're going to do together now. Firstly, I need to introduce you to one of my heroes. He's called Ashley. He's young, he's hugely intelligent, articulate, and just released from prison. And not for the first time. At that point, Ashley was made a bet by his probation officer that he'd be back inside within a year. For those of you who don't work in the criminal justice system, you're right, that's not what probation officers are supposed to do. In fact, it might actually be illegal. Luckily, Ashley made his way to us, and we got him onto an apprenticeship scheme that we'd designed in a record label, and Ashley brought that business new understanding, new insights, new channels to audience that it needed, and in time, he came to me and said, it's time for me to go out on my own. I've understood this business, and more than that, I've understood this sector. I get to see exactly what I should do. I've seen the gap in the market, and I'm going to launch myself and my success into the world. I said, that's amazing. I think maybe you should think about finishing the apprenticeship. You've only been there a week. He wouldn't hold back. He was ready to do this. He wanted to take on the world on his own terms. I said, Ashley, I've got to be honest with you. I don't get paid if you don't finish the apprenticeship, so can we make some kind of deal? And we did. I agreed to help him with his business plan if he finished the apprenticeship. And that's what we did. He went into the world, he signed the first artist to his talent management agency, he got her on the road, he got her on tour, he got her on the radio, he got her on magazines, and then, and bear in mind, this is just after being bet by a probation officer that within a year he'd be back in prison, within a year he got his first artist signed to the world's biggest record label for £100,000. And that is not Ashley is not the most remarkable thing about that story, I think. Because I think that absolutely every single one of our children is born with the opportunity for that kind of success. I think the remarkable thing is the systemized waste that nearly took place to Ashley. The waste that takes place absolutely every single day, in every single country, that's facing economic and social chaos. We are systematically wasting one of the most powerful, one of the most important, one of the most precious natural resources at our disposal, because every single day we systemize the failure and deny the opportunity that we have within all of our young people. And instead of being distracted by the debate around deficits and cuts, which on their own are not going to get us out of this mess, I think we need to invest our time and energies into empowering the opportunity for creative, social, and economic power that we have within our young people. I learned a phrase during this trip. Forgive my pronunciation. E ilara troi te ephiatis. If I nearly got that right. Pethiatis. And it has to stop. It's a fantastic phrase. Greece eats its children. And like you have before, it's a message to the world. We all eat our children, and it absolutely has to stop. I started within the criminal justice system for a reason. Because if we're looking for examples of how we systemize the failure of our young people, the criminal justice system does it really, really well. Across Europe and the northern states of America, in the worst instances, the failure rate of rehabilitation, and this is for young people who've served their time and now deserve an honest chance in society, the failure rate can run up to 90%. You don't often hear 90% connected with failure rates, do you? Such a strange statistic. I mean, put it into a different context. Imagine if 90% of our iPads failed. There'd be middle-class mayhem. The Apple store would be on fire. The media industry would grind to a halt. Or 90% of my cups of tea turned up cold. I wouldn't have it. 90% of young offenders, in the worst cases, go back into prison. And I, like many other people who work in this area, frustrated, banging our heads against the table when faced with brilliant, bright, articulate young people who deserve a chance. And one day, one of these young people took pity on me. Looked me in the face and said, Sam, do you want to know what it was that actually I was really good at? I said, honestly, yeah, actually I do, but I didn't think it was polite to ask. And he told me. He told me a story about his success as a middle manager, the management disciplines that actually he put into place, and he was a fairly ruthless manager when he needed to be, of upwards of 50 people. He told me about his marketing skills. Some social media, but ahead of his time, mainly mobile, based on his understanding of customer relationship management systems. He told me about his understanding of economics, of supply and demand, and profit and loss, and financial control, and he was ruthless when it came to cash flow. And he told me that during bonus season, actually, he was earning more money than I was, And he'd share some of that to supplement his mother's low income to help support his stepbrothers and sisters. And why aren't those skills on his CV? When those are skills that we all really need. Because they're learnt in the informal economy? Can we not see past that? And I'm not for a second forgiving or forgetting the negative impact of the drugs trade whatsoever, but if you park the morality for a moment and think about it, the career, because that's what it was that he chose in his life, was just as much glamorized as it is criticized. I turned around to him, my honest response was, there, but for the grace of God go I, as a young man who's responded to his environment, trying to make his way in the world. So I suggested to him that we started a business together. He said, maybe, but I'm taking 51%. I just met at this time some of the team at Google in the UK. A guy called James Elias was creating business tools, free business tools for startups to help startups and stimulate the economy. I said to him, James, I think I found a group of entrepreneurs that you may have overlooked. James said, really? How exciting. Where are they? I said, they're over here. And to his credit, James and his team backed us in the support of a program for ex-offenders who displayed natural entrepreneurial skills. It was just 6 weeks. They provided business mentoring, digital skills, marketing planning, just to augment the skills that they already had. A year later, had 90% of them reoffended? No. 90% of them had not reoffended. It's now 2 years later, the same 90% still have not reoffended. When we start to add that together, those guys, on average, a young offender costs, give or take, 70,000 euros, $100,000. For 90% of them not to reoffend, half of those are still running their own businesses, which means they're employing people, which means they're creating jobs, they're creating wealth, from social cost to social capital. This isn't just a moral and intellectual argument of how we need to stop the systemized failure of our young people. It's an economic one. And it's a very big economic one. In the Eurozone alone, the cost of the young people who we term as not in education, employment, or training is 150 billion euros a year. 150 billion euros a year. It's very nearly half of Greece's national debt. 150 billion euros a year. That is a cut that I would like to see made. I would like to see that come right down, because I know there's a fair percentage of those young people who can go out just as Ashley and just as these groups of young people did, if we can get out of their way and open doors to opportunity. That plays out across the whole world. In the United States, they've taken exactly the same economics just months ago, but extrapolated it across the life cycle, and then the additional costs that there might be of healthcare and justice. And it comes out at $4.75 trillion. These are very significant sums of money. These are very significant amounts of waste that we are not just tolerating, but we are perpetuating. And there's a clue in that term I just used, the not in education, employment, or training. It's a terrible acronym, and we call these young people NEETs. I don't know how many of you have heard of it. I want to apologize for it. It was something that was originated in the UK. We've now exported it around the world. It's probably our least good export since One Direction, who I apologize for as well, especially the bow tie one. But it's indicative of the systemized failure that we've allowed to take place. NEETs, all of you, in your creative organizations, in your world-changing organizations, looking for talent, looking for inspiration, when would you ever term people by what they're not? These guys, and there's 14 million of them in Europe, all defined by what they're not, before they've even got through the door. And then once you're in that group, you're 20% more likely to end up on the streets, in crime, teenage pregnants, teenage parents. Of the young offender group, 80% of them came from the NEET group. You know, we can see it happening, and we can intervene before it costs us all so much, and we can turn that social cost into social capital earlier and earlier. But how are we doing this back in the UK? Well, I'm working with the same team at Google. We've identified across that broad section of young people, looking at them as a pool of talent and not as a pool of trouble. One skill that they all demonstrate is their natural status as digital natives. When talking to employers and businesses, the one skill they all seem to be looking for is digital skills. So we're running a program for some of the most disadvantaged young people, toughening up their digital skills. And you know what? The employers are lining up. The gaps are there. We just have to keep closing them. We have to keep opening doors instead of closing them. So moving on, I'd like to start talking about what we're going to do, the plan for us and the plan for all of you. And to do that, I'd like to introduce you to my second hero, Shanice Henry, a young woman who, when I met her, was 14, a young black girl from inner city South London who had been excluded from multiple schools. So she's already demonstrating a key skill of tenacity. She arrived in my office, and I should put my office into some context. I keep mentioning it. It's this, we set up, my background was in marketing, and 12 years ago, my business partner and I decided that we were going to start a marketing agency that was going to change the world. That's how naive we were. We're sometimes called a marketing agency with a youth club in the middle of it, sometimes a social enterprise. My favorite explanation was two young men who came into our office just last year, who as troubled teenagers had been with me and now in their early 20s had come in to tell me how successful they were being, and they said, "This office is a transformation engine." I love that phrase. It made me wonder what would happen if just a tiny percentage of our offices became transformation engines. And as one of them left, he said, "Sam, you really ought to give me a job." I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Because I've been here. I know all your secrets. I'm going to start my own marketing agency that's going to change the world if you don't." So he may well be here next year. Back to Shanice Henry. There she is. She's in my office. She's turned up. She's been referred there. She's excluded from schools. And frankly, she's not very pleased about it. We couldn't get a word out of her for the first couple of weeks or encourage her to do any work. But then we did. And with every bit of energy she gave to us, we matched it. Every bit of trust we gave her, she became more trustworthy. Until suddenly, there's not a meeting in my office that doesn't have Shanice Henry in it. We're introducing her to clients. Clients are then asking after how Shanice is doing. The evolution, the blossoming of this talented, insightful young lady took place before our eyes. We got in touch with one of the schools who had excluded Shanice. They came in, they set some performance indicators that she'd need to achieve to get back into school. Shanice knocked them out of the park. She managed to make it back into school just before examinations. She nailed 9. She got 3 A stars. She worked over the course of that summer. She ran for youth mayor of one of the biggest boroughs in London. She came second as deputy youth mayor. On her way to college, she got into her first choice of college to study her favourite topic. Then she got nominated to run with the Olympic torch. And the day before the games in London, Shanice is running through the streets of London with a torch above her head, and my entire office is on its feet in front of the BBC, crying. And an hour later, Shanice came into the office, still holding the torch. We're all still crying. And that is the talent. Thank you very much. Round of applause for Shanice. And that is the talent that every day we waste. I sat Shanice down. I put a contract in front of her. I said, "Right, book deal, speakers tour, we're making $1 million. Shanice, sign here." What was the secret? What was the magic moment that allowed you to do that? Shanice looked back at me and she said, it was hard work. I said, "That's terrible. Give me the contract back. That's never going to get us a book deal." I didn't. That's not how I mentor. Mentoring should be time-specific and goal-orientated, obviously. There you go. And Shanice, I said, "Think hard. Think back to those days when you were miserable as hell. What happened? What switched it back on?" Shanice closed her eyes and she put herself back in that place. And she said, "I know exactly what it was. I remember the day that I realized you lot really did like me." You know, thank you very much. The underestimated power of a human connection goes so far. And you can look at any research that exists in the world worth its salt around this group of young people, and when we ask ourselves questions about these young people and why they display anger and rage as a response to what we try to present as opportunity, the answers are there. And sometimes the answer is as simple as a human connection. And that leads me to my challenge to you, because this is all rather simple stuff. They're big, complicated challenges, but some of the answers aren't. I challenge you and the global TED community to use your networks and your common sense to find your way to an organization that's working with young people like mine and ask and volunteer to mentor a young person to work on a challenge. And hopefully, I've already won the intellectual and moral debate that all of these young people are our responsibility and we have to do something about it. Hopefully now I've also begun to win the economic argument for these young people as potential. Now I'd like to suggest that actually the main beneficiary from this challenge is going to be you. I want you to think of a challenge that you've got in your life, a difficulty, something you can't quite get past. And I want you to take that to this meeting. Whether it's just an hour or a day or a month, I don't mind, goal-orientated and time-specific, that's all mentoring needs to be. And ask a young person their challenge. And together, you're going to find solutions. That's all I need you to do. Now, I can feel the wave of skepticism and, questioning. So I've tested this on your behalf. Recently, I had 12 senior executives of the world's biggest and oldest energy company in my office. They were there in search of innovation and understanding. So I matched them with 12 inner-city teenagers. The integration was seamless. And I asked them to do exactly what I've just asked you to do, but I didn't give them as much time or as much freedom. Each of them presented a challenge, and then I paired them together. So, senior executive over here has got massive problems with his upstream oil and gas supply and distribution, something. Very serious stuff. And over here, I have a young man who's having difficulty getting home from college without getting beaten up by a local gang. Much more serious stuff. That's not fair. It's both serious things. Put them all together, sent them away. 15 minutes is all they had, and I'm giving you your own time period. They all came back. The skepticism across their faces, gone. As one by one by one, they each revealed a solution. If not a solution, certainly a brand new way of looking at a problem they had that they never would have got to before. And as we got to the end, the most senior amongst them, and certainly the most cynical, she didn't just have a solution, but she had tears running down her face, which isn't usually an indicator of client success for me, I assure you, and I'm certainly not going to try and make you cry, but I wanted to make a point. And I want to make this point because I'm hoping that the positive byproduct of us all collectively losing faith in the people who are supposed to be in control means that we devolve that responsibility to ourselves. And this is a very simple act that we can all do. It's a very simple act that I believe will have a profound effect on a young person's life. It's a very simple act that I believe can switch a young person on from being a social cost to being social capital for us all. It's a very profound act that I believe will bring you some innovation and fresh thinking to challenges that you have. It's a very simple act that will cost you nothing to do. But if we don't do, it might just cost us everything. F. Aristotle.